Gate agent throws away black girl's passport. Seconds later, what she did leaves Airline in shock. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into this incredible story. At an airport in New York, the atmosphere was filled with the usual hustle and bustle of travelers. People scurrying to catch their flights, the overhead announcements barely cutting through the noise of rolling suitcases, and the familiar hum of the busy airport. But in the middle of this, a confrontation was unfolding at Gate 22, one that no one could have expected. Behind the counter stood a gate agent, a middle-aged woman with a stern face, typing away at her computer screen. She glanced up for a moment, scanning the line of passengers who were boarding the flight to Paris. Among them stood a young black girl, no older than 17, wearing a casual hoodie and carrying an overstuffed backpack. She was traveling alone, an ambitious high school senior heading abroad for a once-in-a-lifetime educational trip. The young girl stepped up to the counter with a nervous smile, handing over her passport and boarding pass. The gate agent barely looked at her, but then her gaze dropped to the passport, and she gave a small, dismissive sigh. With an air of indifference, the agent tossed the passport to the side, a move so quick and thoughtless that no one in the nearby line seemed to notice at first. The passport landed with a soft thud, carelessly thrown into the garbage bin behind her. The girl froze, her face draining of color. She blinked a few times, as if to make sure she hadn't imagined it. The agent, oblivious to the shock she had caused, continued to type on her computer, muttering something about policy and procedure. The young girl stood there, heart racing, her hands shaking slightly. She knew something had gone terribly wrong. What had just happened? Had she really just been treated like that? The other passengers were oblivious, caught up in their own thoughts and the ever-present rush to board. But for the girl, this moment was something far more than a simple mistake. It felt like an assault on her dignity, a slap to her sense of self-worth. She could feel the heat of embarrassment crawling up her neck, but something else stirred inside of her, a quiet but powerful resolve. She wasn't going to let this pass. Not this time. Not today. Instead of raising her voice or causing a scene, she simply bent down, reached into the trash can, and pulled out her passport. The gate agent didn't seem to notice her. She was still busy typing, still lost in the world of her own routine. But the young girl wasn't done yet. She walked up to the counter again, holding the passport firmly in her hand, this time with a calmness that surprised even herself. She placed the passport on the counter, right in front of the agent, and said in a steady voice, "I believe you accidentally threw my passport away. Could you please give it back to me?" The gate agent paused, finally looking up from her screen. Her eyes widened, her lips parted in surprise as she saw the passport sitting there in front of her. The realization hit her just as the words left her mouth. "Oh my God, I didn't mean to do that." The young girl didn't respond right away. She just waited, standing tall, her eyes locked with the agent's, refusing to look away. The gate agent fumbled with the passport, clearly embarrassed, but the girl's composure seemed to send a message that no one in the airport had expected. The gate agent finally handed it back to her, mumbling an apology. But the girl was already turning away, walking toward the gate, her head held high. As she boarded the plane, a sense of calm washed over her. The confrontation had been small, a fleeting moment in time. But in that moment, she had done something that would stay with her forever. She had taken back her power. And though the airline would never know the true impact of that quiet moment, the young girl did. She had stood up for herself, not through shouting or making a scene, but through her unwavering dignity. And sometimes, that's all it takes. As the young girl walked away from the counter, her heart still pounding, she could feel the weight of the moment lingering in the air. The gate agent was still standing there, her face flushed with embarrassment. But the girl, her grip tight on her passport, had already taken control of the situation in a way that no one had expected. She walked towards the gate, but as she passed through the security line, something inside of her stirred. She hadn't made a scene. She hadn't yelled or demanded anyone's attention. And yet, somehow, she had made herself heard. Her mind wandered back to her childhood, the countless times she had been overlooked, dismissed, or treated as invisible simply because of the color of her skin. She had learned early on to stay quiet, to shrink herself, to blend into the background. But today, in that moment, she had found her voice. She didn't know if she was proud of what she had done, or if she was still processing what had just happened. But one thing was clear. She wasn't just a passenger on this flight. She was more than that. And today, she had reclaimed her space. As the flight was called, she took her seat, the familiar hum of the airplane engines setting in. She tried to relax, tried to breathe, but her mind kept replaying the events from earlier. She glanced at the other passengers, a mix of business travelers, families, and tourists. None of them had noticed what had just happened. None of them had witnessed the quiet act of defiance that had just played out in front of them. But she had, and in some strange way, that was enough for her. As the plane ascended into the clouds, she gazed out of the window, feeling the familiar sense of peace that came with travel. She had no idea what was ahead of her, what this trip would bring, or what kind of people she would meet. But for the first time in a long time, she felt in control of her own destiny. The world outside the window seemed to stretch on forever, full of possibilities. And as she sat there, thinking back on the gate agent's dismissive gesture, she realized that sometimes, power doesn't have to come from confrontation. Sometimes, it comes from simply standing tall, from claiming your space and refusing to be invisible. The rest of the flight was uneventful. She spent most of it lost in her thoughts, but as the plane began its descent into Paris, she couldn't help but smile. A small victory, perhaps, but one that would stick with her for the rest of her life. The kind of victory that wasn't about money or status, but about dignity. When the plane landed, she stepped off onto the tarmac, ready to begin a new chapter of her life. She didn't know it yet, but this trip would change her in ways she couldn't yet understand. But what she did know was that she had started this journey with a sense of power and strength that would carry her forward. And no matter what happened next, nothing could take that away from her. As the plane touched down in Paris, the young girl felt a mix of excitement and uncertainty wash over her. The events from earlier in the day felt like a distant memory, yet the sense of empowerment she had experienced lingered, settling deep within her. She stepped off the plane, her feet hitting the foreign ground of a new city, and for the first time in a long while, she felt as though she was standing in her own power. She knew this trip would be life-changing, but she had no idea just how much it would alter the course of her future. With her passport tightly in hand, she moved through customs, her mind still racing from the events that had transpired just hours before. She had never felt more visible, more confident in her own skin. In the bustling airport, she was just one of many, but to herself, she was someone who had found her voice in the most unexpected of ways. As she walked through the terminal, she couldn't help but notice how different the people around her looked. The French spoke in their melodic accents, the air filled with the scent of freshly baked croissants and coffee from nearby cafes. It was a world of sophistication and culture, a stark contrast to the hurried and chaotic atmosphere of the airport in New York. She couldn't help but smile. The city felt alive, welcoming, as though it was ready to offer her something more than just a tourist experience. Her phone buzzed, and she saw a text from her mother. "How's the flight? Everything okay?" Her mother's message was simple, but it meant the world to her. She had always been her support system, her constant cheerleader, and for the first time in a long while, the girl felt ready to make her mother proud. She responded quickly, "The flight was fine. I'm in Paris now, and everything is great." But as she typed, something else caught her attention. Her mind flashed back to the gate agent, the woman's dismissive attitude, the way she had carelessly thrown away her passport. She felt a knot form in her stomach. She had done the right thing by standing up for herself, but the incident had left a lingering sting. She could still hear the snickers of the other passengers, the uncomfortable silence that followed her quiet defiance. She knew the world often looked at her in ways that were unfair, that her worth would sometimes be questioned because of her skin, her background, her appearance. But in that moment, something had shifted within her. She had chosen to rise above the judgment. She had chosen to fight back without aggression, without anger. She had fought back with dignity. As she made her way out of the airport and into the city, she felt the weight of her actions settling in. She wasn't just in Paris for a vacation. She was here to prove to herself that she could conquer the world, one step at a time. The streets of Paris were filled with people, each absorbed in their own world. Yet to the girl, everything felt different now. She was no longer the same person who had boarded that plane in New York. She had already made a statement. She had already changed the trajectory of her life. As she walked along the cobbled streets, the sounds of the city, the honking of taxis, the chatter of tourists, the clinking of cafe glasses, seemed to hum in harmony with her own heartbeat. She was part of this. She belonged here. And in that moment, she realized that she had something far more valuable than a passport or a plane ticket. She had her dignity, her strength, and her unshakable belief that she could carve her own path. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, but she was ready for whatever came next. She wasn't just going to survive in this new city, she was going to thrive. As she approached her hotel, she felt a sense of anticipation, knowing that this was only the beginning of a much bigger story. Her journey of self-discovery had just begun, and she was determined to make it one worth telling. The next few days in Paris unfolded like a dream for the young girl. She found herself immersed in the culture, the language, and the beauty of a city that felt both foreign and familiar. Every corner seemed to hold a new adventure, whether it was the grandeur of the Eiffel Tower or the quiet charm of a cafe tucked away on a side street. But as much as she tried to lose herself in the experience, the memory of the gate agent's dismissive gesture and her defiant response kept creeping back into her mind. It was as if a part of her had been left behind in New York, and she was now carrying that weight with her. One afternoon, while she was strolling along the Seine, taking in the sights and sounds of Paris, her phone buzzed. It was a text message from her mother. "How's everything going, sweetheart? Are you adjusting well?" The girl smiled and quickly typed back, "Everything's great. I'm seeing so much of the city and feeling more confident every day." As she hit send, she couldn't help but wonder if her mother would ever truly understand the weight of what had happened. No, it wasn't just about a thrown passport. It was about something much deeper. It was about how the world saw her, how it often saw her as less than, and how she had taken a stand to prove otherwise. She had always known that her journey through life would be different from others. The color of her skin, the way she spoke, even the way she carried herself. Everything about her was often scrutinized, judged, or dismissed. But in that moment at the airport, she had felt something shift inside her. She had gone from being a girl who tried to blend in, who tried to shrink to fit into the world's expectations, to someone who was determined to take up space. The plane ride to Paris had been a turning point, and Paris itself had only intensified that feeling. As she sat at a cafe one afternoon, sipping a cappuccino and watching the world go by, she noticed a man across the street staring at her. He was sitting alone, dressed in a sharp suit, with dark sunglasses perched on his nose. There was something about him that seemed familiar, but she couldn't quite place it. Her mind wandered for a moment, and then, just as quickly as she had noticed him, she turned her attention back to the street, watching the cyclists weave through the traffic. But as the man stood up and crossed the street, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. He was heading straight for her, and something about his presence made her uneasy. As he approached, she could see his sharp features and confident stride. He stopped right in front of her, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. He was staring at her with an intensity that made her heart race. "Excuse me," he said, his voice smooth, but there was an underlying urgency to it. "Are you the one from the airport in New York?" The girl's eyes widened in surprise. How could he possibly know? He must have seen the incident. He must have seen the moment she had stood up for herself. "Yes," she said slowly, unsure of what he wanted. The man smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that made her feel as if he were trying to measure her, to see if she would break under his gaze. "I saw what happened at the airport," he said. "You know, not many people would have handled that the way you did. Most people would have just let it slide. But you didn't. That was impressive." The girl didn't know how to respond. She felt a sense of discomfort wash over her, but she didn't back down. She had already proven to herself that she was stronger than she had ever imagined. "I didn't have a choice," she replied, her voice steady. "I wasn't going to let someone treat me that way." The man nodded, his expression changing slightly. "I respect that," he said. "In fact, I think you're someone who could go places. You've got the kind of strength I haven't seen in a long time." He paused, as if weighing his next words carefully. "I'm Ethan Monroe," he said, extending his hand. I run a tech company, and I think we could work together. I need someone with your kind of mindset. The girl took a step back, startled by his offer. This wasn't what she had expected. She had just been enjoying a quiet afternoon in Paris, not thinking about her future or what came next. But now, this man, someone who clearly had power, wealth, and influence, was offering her an opportunity. An opportunity that could change everything. I'm not sure what you mean, she said cautiously. What kind of work are you talking about? Ethan smiled again, his eyes gleaming with the same intensity as before. I'm talking about a chance to work with someone who understands what it takes to break through the barriers that others set for you. Someone who knows what it means to stand up for themselves. I see that in you, and I think we could help each other. The girl was silent for a moment, processing what he had just said. This was a turning point, and though she wasn't sure where it would lead, she knew one thing. She had already proved that she could handle whatever came her way. Whatever this man had to offer, she was ready to face it. She extended her hand and shook his. All right, she said. Let's see where this goes. The next few weeks were a blur for the girl. After meeting Ethan Monroe in Paris, everything began to shift. What had started as a quiet, introspective trip was quickly becoming an unexpected opportunity for her future. Ethan had kept in touch, arranging meetings and phone calls, discussing the potential of working together on various projects. The girl, still unsure about what exactly this would mean for her, had decided to take a chance. She wasn't the type to back down, not after everything she had already been through. But now, she was faced with a decision that would change her life. Ethan's offer was no small thing. He had given her access to resources, information, and a chance to work in a space that many would kill for. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that this opportunity wasn't just about what Ethan could give her. It was about what she could bring to the table. This was her chance to prove herself, to make a name for herself in a world that hadn't always been kind to her. But as the days passed, doubts began to creep in. She was young, and though she had the confidence of someone much older, she still felt like an outsider in this new world. The tech industry was full of sharp minds and seasoned professionals, and she was just a girl from New York with a dream and a passport. What did she really know about the world Ethan lived in? Was she ready for what he was asking of her? Her thoughts were interrupted by a call from Ethan one morning. He was inviting her to a meeting at his office in downtown Paris. It's time to take the next step, he said, his voice calm and confident, as always. Come by the office this afternoon. We have some exciting things to discuss. The girl took a deep breath and accepted. She had been to the office building before, when they had first met, but now it felt different. It felt like the first day of a new life. As she entered the building, she was greeted by Ethan's assistant, who led her up to a sleek, modern office on the top floor. The view from the window was breathtaking. Paris stretched out before her, the city alive with possibility. Ethan was standing by the window, looking out at the skyline. When he turned to face her, there was a look in his eyes that made her feel both nervous and excited. I've been thinking about how we can work together, he said. I see something in you. Something that a lot of people miss. You've got the kind of intuition and strength that's rare in this business. She felt a mix of pride and discomfort. She didn't know what to say. Ethan continued, I've got a project that I think you're perfect for. It's big, and it'll take everything you've got, but I believe you can handle it. The girl's heart raced. She was both thrilled and terrified. What was he offering her? Was this a test, or was this real? I'm listening, she said, her voice steady. Ethan smiled, a genuine smile that made her feel like she had earned his respect. There's a company that we're looking to acquire, but it's been a tricky negotiation. They don't want to sell, and we've hit a wall. I need someone with fresh eyes, someone who can come in and figure out what's going wrong. The girl's mind started racing. She had no experience in corporate negotiations, no background in business strategy, but she had something else. She had the instinct that Ethan had seen in her, the same instinct that had made her stand up to the gate agent at the airport. I'll do it, she said, surprising herself with her own confidence. I'll figure it out. Ethan nodded. I knew you would. I'm giving you the resources you need. You'll have my full support. Over the next few days, she dove into the project headfirst. She spent hours researching the company, learning about their operations, their financials, and their key players. She worked late into the night, piecing together a strategy that she hoped would break the stalemate. As the meeting with the company's executives drew near, the girl felt a mixture of excitement and fear. She knew this was her chance to prove herself. But there was a part of her that still wondered if she was really ready. The day of the meeting, she walked into the conference room with her head held high. The executives were seated around the table, their expressions neutral, but the girl could feel the weight of their scrutiny. She took a deep breath and began her presentation. She laid out her findings, pointing out the flaws in their approach and offering a fresh perspective that they had never considered. She could see their faces changing, their skepticism melting into curiosity. By the end of the meeting, they were nodding along, agreeing to the terms she had outlined. The deal wasn't done yet, but she had broken through the wall they had hit. As the meeting wrapped up, Ethan came up to her, his face breaking into a smile. "You did it," he said. "You really did it." The girl felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she also felt something else. She had done more than just win the meeting. She had proven to herself that she belonged here, in this world that had always seemed so far out of reach. And as she looked out the window, watching the sun set over Paris, she knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life. After the successful meeting, the girl felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. The adrenaline that had kept her sharp throughout the day began to fade, replaced by a quiet confidence that filled her like a warm light. As she sat in the lobby of the office building, waiting for her ride back to the hotel, she realized that something inside her had shifted. She was no longer just a young girl from New York who had been overlooked and underestimated. She was now someone who had proven her worth in a room full of powerful, seasoned professionals. But as she reflected on her success, a new challenge was already looming. The deal with the company was moving forward, but it wasn't going to be as simple as one meeting. There would be negotiations, tough decisions, and moments where the stakes were going to be high. Ethan had placed a lot of trust in her, and she couldn't afford to let him down. It was a heavy responsibility, but it was also an opportunity that she couldn't pass up. That night, as she sat in her hotel room, she went over the details of the upcoming negotiation in her mind. She reviewed the data, the potential risks, and the ways she could approach the other side. She was meticulous, prepared, and determined. Yet, there was a lingering doubt that kept creeping in. Was she really capable of handling all of this? Was she in over her head? Her thoughts were interrupted by a text from Ethan. "Tomorrow's the big day. We're counting on you." It was simple, but it filled her with both excitement and fear. She knew this was the moment that would define whether she could truly step into the world Ethan was offering her. The next morning, she arrived at the negotiation table feeling a sense of calm she hadn't expected. She had spent hours preparing, and now it was time to put everything into action. The executives from the company she was negotiating with sat across from her, their faces unreadable. The atmosphere in the room was tense, but the girl remained focused. She knew that this wasn't just about a business deal. It was about proving to herself that she could succeed in this world, a world that had always seemed so distant. The meeting began with the usual pleasantries, but it didn't take long for the real conversation to start. The company executives were skeptical of the terms Ethan had proposed, and the tension in the room started to rise. They pushed back, challenging her every move, questioning her knowledge and her experience. But the girl didn't flinch. She kept her composure, speaking with confidence and authority. She had done her research, and she wasn't going to let them intimidate her. She countered their arguments with facts, offered alternatives when necessary, and stayed calm under pressure. With every response, she could feel the power shifting in her favor. By the time the meeting reached its climax, the executives were no longer dismissing her. They were listening. They were engaging. And, most importantly, they were considering her proposals. It was a small victory, but it was enough to turn the tide. When the meeting ended, the deal wasn't fully closed, but they had agreed to continue the negotiations. As the girl walked out of the room, she felt a rush of relief. It wasn't over yet, but she had held her ground. She had stepped up in a way she never thought possible, and for the first time, she felt like she truly belonged in this world. Ethan was waiting for her in the lobby, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a hint of excitement. "You did it," he said with a smile. "I knew you could." The girl didn't respond immediately. She was still processing everything that had just happened, but she couldn't help but smile. She had done it, and it felt incredible. Over the next few days, the negotiations continued, but the girl's confidence grew with every step. She had proven to herself that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. And as the deal began to take shape, She knew that this was only the beginning. She wasn't just here to make a name for herself. She was here to change the game. When the final agreement was signed, the girl felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond the business world. This wasn't just about closing a deal. It was about taking control of her own future. She had fought for her place at the table, and she had earned it. As she left the office for the last time, she looked out at the Paris skyline, knowing that she had just taken the first step toward a future that was hers to create. As the weeks passed, the girl's confidence in the business world only grew. She had managed to navigate the tricky negotiations, earning the respect of the executives and securing the deal that had once seemed so far out of reach. But even with all of this progress, something inside her began to shift. The success she had experienced wasn't just about the deal, or the recognition from Ethan, or even the praise from the people she had worked with. It was about how she saw herself now. She wasn't the same person who had walked into that airport in New York, unsure of where her life was headed. She had found her voice, not just in a single moment, but in every step that had followed. Every challenge she faced, every uncomfortable situation, every doubt, she had faced them head-on, and it had made her stronger. But despite her growing success, she found herself questioning what came next. The tech world, the business world, even Paris, it all felt like a temporary phase in her life. Was this what she truly wanted? Was this the future she had envisioned for herself when she first arrived in Paris? Her thoughts were interrupted when Ethan called. "How's everything going?" he asked, his voice casual, but with a note of curiosity. She smiled, but the question lingered in her mind. "Everything's great," she replied. "The deal's moving forward. The company's excited about the progress." Ethan seemed pleased, but there was something else in his voice. "I'm glad to hear it. You've done an incredible job so far." There was a pause before he continued. "But I need to know something. Are you happy with what you're doing? Because I've seen what you're capable of, and I think you could be doing so much more." The girl's heart skipped a beat. She had always admired Ethan's drive, his vision, but this was different. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was about something deeper. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice tentative. "You've got talent, you've got the mind for this business, but I see something more in you," Ethan said, his voice softening. "You don't just fit in here, you're meant to lead. And that's why I'm offering you something big. A chance to step into a role that could change everything for you. You're capable of leading teams, making decisions that influence entire industries. I see that potential in you." The girl sat back in her chair, processing his words. Leading? She had always been part of the team, never the leader. But the more she thought about it, the more it resonated. She had proven herself capable of handling pressure, navigating challenges, and making an impact. But leading, truly leading, was something different. Could she do it? Could she lead a team, take on that kind of responsibility? Ethan seemed to sense her hesitation. "I'm not asking you to decide right now," he continued. "But I want you to think about it. This is about your future, and I believe you're ready for something bigger than you even realize." She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. Was she ready to take that leap? The girl had always been a dreamer, someone who believed in the power of possibility, but she had never imagined herself in a leadership role. She had spent most of her life fighting to be seen, to prove that she belonged in the room. But now, Ethan was telling her that she could take the next step, not just by showing up, but by leading others. As she walked through the streets of Paris that evening, she thought about everything Ethan had said. She had already accomplished so much, but was this the direction she wanted to go? Was this the future she had always dreamed of? The idea of leadership felt daunting, but also exciting. For the first time, she realized that this wasn't just about surviving. It wasn't about proving herself anymore. It was about owning her power, stepping into her future, and making the kind of impact she had always dreamed of. She wasn't just here to make deals. She was here to change the game. The next few days were filled with long hours, meetings, and reflection. She started to look at the bigger picture, not just in terms of business, but in terms of her own growth. What did she want for her life? What kind of leader did she want to become? The answers were still forming, but one thing was clear. She wasn't going to settle. She had worked too hard, fought too long, and come too far to let fear hold her back now. As she prepared for her next meeting with Ethan, she felt a sense of clarity settle over her. She was ready to take the leap, ready to lead, and ready to make her mark on the world. As the days passed, the girl's life began to feel like A whirlwind of meetings, decisions, and responsibilities. She had taken the leap, and now she was in the midst of shaping her future in ways she never imagined. Ethan's offer to lead a team had not been an empty one. He had entrusted her with overseeing a key project, one that would require her to not only make decisions, but also influence others, guide them, and take full responsibility for the outcome. The weight of it all wasn't lost on her, but neither was the opportunity. She had spent years proving herself capable, and now, for the first time, she was being given the chance to truly lead. It was everything she had ever dreamed of and more. As she prepared for the first team meeting, she couldn't help but feel the pressure building. She was no longer just a contributor. She was now the person everyone would look to for direction, for answers. There was no room for hesitation, no time to doubt herself. This was her moment, and she knew it. The conference room was sleek, modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Ethan was there, of course, but today, the focus was on her. She had gathered a small but talented team, a mix of experienced professionals and newcomers, each with their own strengths and expertise. As she walked into the room, she felt the eyes of her team on her, waiting for her to take charge. It was a moment of truth. She stood tall, taking a deep breath before speaking. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady but filled with a quiet confidence. "We have a lot to accomplish, and I know we can do it if we all work together. I believe in this team, and I believe in each of you." There was a pause, and then a few nods around the table. Ethan gave her a slight smile, an encouraging look. The girl took it as a sign to continue. "We've been tasked with making sure this acquisition goes smoothly. It's going to take hard work, long hours, and a lot of coordination. But I know we can make it happen." As she spoke, she could feel the energy in the room shift. She wasn't just giving a speech, she was leading. She could see her team beginning to buy into her vision, trusting her words. They weren't just following orders. They were starting to believe that together, they could succeed. The meeting progressed smoothly, and by the end of it, the girl had outlined a clear path forward. She had listened to her team's input, made decisions based on their feedback, and ensured that everyone knew their role. As the meeting concluded, Ethan pulled her aside. "That was impressive," he said, his voice filled with genuine respect. "You've got something special. I knew it from the moment we met, and now, it's clear to everyone else, too." She smiled, grateful for his support, but her mind was already racing. The work was just beginning. Over the next few weeks, the team worked tirelessly. There were setbacks, difficult negotiations, and moments of doubt, but the girl remained focused. She knew that this was her test, not just to prove herself to Ethan or the company, but to herself. As the project progressed, the girl's leadership skills continued to shine. She faced challenges head-on, made tough decisions when necessary, and always kept her team motivated. Her ability to listen, to remain calm under pressure, and to find solutions to complex problems made her an invaluable asset to the team. But as much as she was thriving in her role, there was still a part of her that struggled with the pressure. Leading wasn't easy. Every day, there were new obstacles to overcome, new challenges to face. But with each challenge, she grew stronger. One evening, after a particularly long day, she found herself alone in her hotel room, looking out at the Paris skyline. The city was as beautiful as ever, but for the first time, she truly saw it, not just as a backdrop for her journey, but as a reflection of the path she was carving for herself. She had come so far, but the road ahead was still long. The girl wasn't just leading a project or managing a team, she was leading herself. And in that moment, she realized that she had found something even more valuable than success. She had found her true self. She wasn't the girl who had been ignored and dismissed. She was a leader, someone who had earned her place at the table. And as she took a deep breath, she made a promise to herself that no matter what came next, she would keep moving forward, keep striving, and never let anyone define her. The girl had become more than she ever imagined, and this was only the beginning of her story. As the days passed, the girl's life began to feel like a whirlwind of meetings, decisions, and responsibilities. She had taken the leap, and now she was in the midst of shaping her future in ways she never imagined. Ethan's offer to lead a team had not been an empty one. He had entrusted her with overseeing a key project, one that would require her to not only make decisions, but also influence others, guide them, and take full responsibility for the outcome. The weight of it all wasn't lost on her, but neither was the opportunity. She had spent years proving herself capable, and now, for the first time, she was being given the chance to truly lead. It was everything she had ever dreamed of and more. As she prepared for the first team meeting, she couldn't help but feel the pressure building. She was no longer just a contributor. She was now the person everyone would look to for direction, for answers. There was no room for hesitation, no time to doubt herself. This was her moment, and she knew it. The conference room was sleek, modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Ethan was there, of course, but today, the focus was on her. She had gathered a small but talented team, a mix of experienced professionals and newcomers, each with their own strengths and expertise. As she walked into the room, she felt the eyes of her team on her, waiting for her to take charge. It was a moment of truth. She stood tall, taking a deep breath before speaking. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady but filled with a quiet confidence. "We have a lot to accomplish, and I know we can do it if we all work together. I believe in this team, and I believe in each of you." There was a pause, and then a few nods around the table. Ethan gave her a slight smile, an encouraging look. The girl took it as a sign to continue. "We've been tasked with making sure this acquisition goes smoothly. It's going to take hard work, long hours, and a lot of coordination. But I know we can make it happen." As she spoke, she could feel the energy in the room shift. She wasn't just giving a speech, she was leading. She could see her team beginning to buy into her vision, trusting her words. They weren't just following orders, they were starting to believe that together, they could succeed. The meeting progressed smoothly, and by the end of it, the girl had outlined a clear path forward. She had listened to her team's input, made decisions based on their feedback, and ensured that everyone knew their role. As the meeting concluded, Ethan pulled her aside. "That was impressive," he said, his voice filled with genuine respect. "You've got something special. I knew it from the moment we met, and now, it's clear to everyone else, too." She smiled, grateful for his support, but her mind was already racing. The work was just beginning. Over the next few weeks, the team worked tirelessly. There were setbacks, difficult negotiations, and moments of doubt, but the girl remained focused. She knew that this was her test, not just to prove herself to Ethan or the company, but to herself. As the project progressed, the girl's leadership skills continued to shine. She faced challenges head-on, made tough decisions when necessary, and always kept her team motivated. Her ability to listen, to remain calm under pressure, and to find solutions to complex problems made her an invaluable asset to the team. But as much as she was thriving in her role, there was still a part of her that struggled with the pressure. Leading wasn't easy. Every day, there were new obstacles to overcome, new challenges to face. But with each challenge, she grew stronger. One evening, after a particularly long day, she found herself alone in her hotel room, looking out at the Paris skyline. The city was as beautiful as ever, but for the first time, she truly saw it, not just as a backdrop for her journey, but as a reflection of the path she was carving for herself. She had come so far, but the road ahead was still long. The girl wasn't just leading a project or managing a team, she was leading herself. And in that moment, she realized that she had found something even more valuable than success. She had found her true self. She wasn't the girl who had been ignored and dismissed. She was a leader, someone who had earned her place at the table. And as she took a deep breath, she made a promise to herself that no matter what came next, she would keep moving forward, keep striving, and never let anyone define her. The girl had become more than she ever imagined, and this was only the beginning of her story.